it's amazing how what age will do and time will do to your memory and everything else. I get a lot of compliments for the shape I'm in,
Right.
but they don't record my memory or actually write my.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm gonna start. All right.
No.
I'm gonna ask you some questions I've asked you before, just so I can get it on camera. So, I'm sorry if it annoys you. I'm Jeremiah Grant, and today I'm interviewing Mr. John Jedrick at his house in Hudson Falls, New York. Mr. Jedrick was a waist gunner on a B-17. He was a prisoner of war, and now he's here with us. So how old are you now?
91.
Where were you December 7th, 1941?
December 7th, 41. I don't know, probably. Oh boy, that's a stretch.
Is it?
No, December in 41.
When they attacked Pearl Harbor.
Oh, the Pearl Harbor?
Yeah.
You know, actually, that didn't make a big impact. Well, I must have been out there watching the sky flaring and everything, all the noise and whatnot. So, whatever it was, I don't remember. My memory is vague on that because actually it's with some people now, they will remember when they had their last cup of coffee, you know, 10 years ago. Not with me. Everything is just, today is today and tomorrow it's tomorrow, it's gone. Don't linger on anything. And so I don't have a, memory isn't my best shot anyway.
Do you know what were your feelings when you found out that Pearl Harbor had been bombed?
Well, now we're talking about December. I was, because I went into service in October of what, 40, well, no, let's see, yeah. Not 45, I was discharged in 39. I enlisted in 39. I wish we had that sheet there with all my, so we could, I think we ought to take a rain check here until I can find.
If you want.
But anyway, we can rehearse if there's a lot of actually, well, unrelated shots or anything like that. We can rehearse it and go over it again, I guess. Well, no, we can't because actually it's being recorded, right?
Yeah.
So this is.
I can just keep asking questions. You can tell me what you remember.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
How did you get into the war?
How did I
get into the war?
Oh, I enlisted.
All right.
Okay. Yes, I did, and that was in October. Do you have a date on that? No. Well, it was 39.
All right. What was it that you wanted to do when you got in?
Oh, actually, I didn't have anything in mind, so I went through the rookie camp and through the processing, and they more or less. My first job was actually as a supply clerk, and from the supply clerk, why, of course, eventually whatever happened. Oh, well, yes, there's a little story on that. I qualified, you know, through physical running, hopping, you know, whatever what do you call it on the? Oh boy.
Physically fit?
What was it?
You were physically fit to do something?
No, I'm talking about how they actually picked you out for well, you had to qualify on running and jumping and physical fitness.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, a lot of them, you know, didn't. So they put me in there as put me in the Air Force as the first job was in the actually in the as a crew member.
Mm-hmm.
So we were flying out of, that was at Guatemala.
Mm-hmm.
And we were flying at that time when the war broke out. Why, we were flying sub patrol from Guatemala into the Galapagos Islands, making a sweep, go down there, spend the night down there on the island, and come back the next day. Have a, you know, the run was a bomb run, submarine actually. It wasn't a bomb run; it was a submarine patrol. From there, why, then you qualified as a gunner, and well, you had to qualify. Well, actually, it was a process on the training too, along with the training on the being assigned to a 17 as a crew member. Why, then the next step was being a gunner, you know. So
you're the waist gunner?
A waist gunner, you know. So there again, that was the only incident I remember being on that training session there. We went on a night session there, and we get into, I just forget whether, we're coming back and back to the base there, and the pilot and the co-pilot, they forgot to put the landing gear down, so we made a belly landing there. But that was just one of the highlights of the incident, you know, something happened.
Do you remember your first mission?
Yes, and it was scary because you're going into something unknown.
Mm.
So actually it takes, I think, probably 2 or 3 or maybe 4 missions, you know, when you get a taste of well, actually the action, you know, fighting action, you know, when the Germans come after you, they make a. One thing I remember there that which came to be true is when you get assigned to a flight, especially if you were new, they put you on the tail end of the flight there, and that's where they pick you out. The Germans have a habit of picking the tail end, or actually they wouldn't hit the front end there because that's where all the firepower was. But so we ran into well, you got a good taste of the real action, you know, the firepower and the rattle of the guns and stuff like that. So if I want to joke there, I'd say, well, the biggest headache on that was your plumbing. You get it so scared that your system was loose, or nervous as all. It was nerve-wracking because, as I say, after 2 or 3 tries at it, why, some experience, why, then you knew what you were getting into. It got to be routine. you spot everybody, would spot a plane, you'd call out at the position where the fighters were, you know, from the height, you know, high, low, east, west, and whatnot, and the number. So each position kept track of all those because they'd be up there circling around, and then all of a sudden they'd, when they decided to hit you, why they'd come down in the swoops and come at you, fire, you know. It's almost impossible to hit them anyway. But of course we got in the long run, why we got a few of them, but they were, of course, the Germans were very good on the Luft. It was well experienced and well trained and very competitive. We, well, as our group, it was a 100-bomb group, and I think we were picked out by the Germans. So what they would do is they would single out one group, and they'd kind of weaken it down, you know, by attack after attack, and it all depends how many bombers they would take out of action. That is, you know, on those runs, where you lost most of them was on the bomb runs. Now we hit, I think with that those notes I've got, I've got where we hit Berlin, I think 2 or 3 times, and that was one of the best fortified city, or whatever you would want to call it, in the whole, because actually they everything depended on, well, on how well fortified and how well they kept the city from being overbombed, or, you know, real destructive. Because for morale purposes and whatnot, you know, if we did too much damage, why, well, you knock out us, well. Well, that's what we did too. It was, they would hit, our concentration was mostly on heavy industry. And so that's what they would do. They would they would hit that and come back and hit it again and again. And when they finally were they satisfied that they did enough damage to take them out of action, why they lit up and went out with someone did something else.
So were most of your missions a day or night?
We did the daytime. The nighttime was for the English.
Right.
Because actually they weren't fortified and they didn't have the planes that we had. They had those big cumbersome planes, slow, and I don't know. But anyway, they weren't actually in a position to do daylight bombings, because we did all the. Well, actually, do you realize at the peak of these bomb raids, we were putting up 1,500 bombers on some of those big raids.
Wow.
That's quite a, and the bombing was, I'm not to touch on that, but anyway, it was on a queue. when you come into a city and you had to lead the pilot and the bombardier, and when they come in to hit a target, well then actually it was all on timing in there, because the first group of bombers would hit it, then they'd follow up with the second group, so you wouldn't bomb the same target, you know. Actually, it was well, more or less a kind of a blanket bombing, because you, whatever if the target was here, the first here, then, did you ever see some of the bombing out of the,
Right.
that's how it went, you know, because it was all followed up.
So how high were you when you were flying?
Well, actually, generally in about 30,000 feet or so, 32,000 feet.
Pretty high up.
That's, you know, yeah. Well, that was actually, it wasn't, it was also a safety valve for, you know, the bombers too at that height. Because there was an advantage to, if you were down, like the English, flying low, well, that's the reason they weren't flying the daylight, because they didn't have the B-17 was a Boeing ship, and it was, well, actually the design and everything, well, I don't know, what would you call a ship that was really slick and cute?
Aerodynamic.
Well, if you had a car that was, you know, the design on it, you know, I wish this was 50 years ago.
That's all right. Did anyone ever get hurt on the mission, or did you ever get hurt while on a mission? Did you ever get hurt on the mission?
I didn't, but yes, we took some. I know. Of course, eventually we did lose the turret man, the ball turret man, and well, yes, we got crippled quite a few times. Now I know in one case there now, and again it was. Because there I'm having a problem even getting his name, but we didn't have any kills on the, you know, on the bomb by being attacked, but we did have where well, actually yes, flying the plexiglass and stuff like shattered, the glass shattered, the plexiglass shattered. Now I know what's his name, he had a face full of it and whatnot. I know in one time I got him down, and we carried a kit where you had it was, I just forget what it was. It was an injection for a painkiller. So then, and it wrapped up.
Morphine?
Huh?
Was it morphine?
Well, probably, it was something, probably, I don't know what it was to make, but anyway, I know it was my job. So I got him, had the bandages and the medication, probably Vaseline or whatever it was over his eyes and stuff like that, and then strapped him up, you know, wrapped up his, bandaged his head and whatnot. And then, of course, when after the mission was coming in, why they'd have the ambulance pick him up when we landed.
Right.
And, I know he was in the hospital for, I think about, almost 2 weeks. Because we used to go on our bikes and visit him, you know, and stuff like that, so. But I think I don't know, he wasn't the same
No.
after that incident, you know. That's why, well, but the way they, well, they wouldn't take anybody off duty, you know, because it was I suppose in extreme cases of you know,
Jury.
well, I imagine they would, but ordinarily there was no babying any
Right.
at that time. Whatever you get, and I suppose. Well, it was up to the doctors anyway, finally, but but then the doctors weren't, they wouldn't check you out too closely whether on your nervous system or how your nerves stood up to the stress and whatnot and, on these runs.
What was that like once you were past the initial point where you were locked in on your bomb pattern? How'd you feel knowing that you couldn't move? Even if they were shooting right at you, and you couldn't bail out after a certain point. What were your thoughts like? How'd you feel?
When we got hit, no. Actually, so we just finished the run there at the refinery works.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the biggest oil refinery plants in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And we just made the pass on that. I had emptied our bombs, and on the way out, the first thing you know, they plucked us out of the sky. You know, just a tail end of after we made released our bombs and stuff like that. So.
Where was the oil refinery?
In
Brux.
Czechoslovakia. What was the name of that place?
Brux.
Huh?
Brux.
Who's running that show?
Right.
That's what I say. My memory is, it's terrible.
It's all right.
I listened to some of these old timers, not so much on the Air Force, but going down to these reunions and coffee jams with the veterans, and they're jabbing away, and they're talking about the last time they got a new pair of shoes or did this and that, you know. Right down to the most inconsequential thing, incident anyway. But with me, I don't know. I know one time, well, even before we were over in Puerto Rico,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a bomb run on our barracks. So the first thing I did, everybody got us about being, well, this was actually before they declared war. And all the guns and everything were all wrapped up in that heavy, I just forget what they called it, the grease and of the sort. But I know I ran out on the steps of the barrack and I'm watching all that action, the sky all lit up, the bombs flying all over, everybody hiding, running. And we didn't have our guns or anything like that, and they had the Puerto Ricans down there on the shoreline down there. But well, I don't know. But that was the first taste I got of the action.
So, what was it that shot your plane down?
Well, it was actually an anti-aircraft. So, well, of course, they had the best anti-aircraft system in the world.
Mm-hmm.
probably still is, the 88
Mm-hmm.
and the aircraft. They had the range and the power. It was, actually it was a complete gun. It was, well, it was an all-purpose gun.
Mm-hmm.
They could use it for, personnel or anti-tank or whatnot, anti-aircraft and tanks or whatever. But that 88 was probably one of the Germans' best gun.
So,
We didn't have anything comparable to that until after the war. After the war, it was the Russians and the Americans. They went on there and walked away, dismantled all their factories, blueprints and everything, and hauled them home. And when we got it, well, actually, I don't know whether you remember some of this stuff. I just forget who was ahead of the airspace, some German. There we go again. I can't remember, but we had a German ahead of the space program. He was a German, and I guess we nailed him. I don't know whether they nailed him or they got him, but anyway, he joined us at that time.
how many missions had you flown when you were shot down?
Well, that was number 14, and then we call it 14 and a half.
Right. No return.
Yeah, because we did come back on the last one. But that was quite a record, because actually at that time, there weren't too many, you know, they had a set number of missions that you, before, and then they would give you a trip back home, what they call an RD, and I'm not too familiar with that anymore, anyway. But what was the question there again?
Just how many missions you had flown before you were shot down? You said 14 and a half?
Yeah, 14 and a half.
Right.
So that was the end of that. No, but that wasn't as bad as being a prisoner of war. You know, in a lot of cases, I don't know. You run into a lot of abuse and, well, actually threaten you at every, put a rifle out in front of your nose, call you swinehorn, horse game, swinehorn, well, they call you a pig and everything else. You know, German, it was swine this, swine that, and
So where did the Germans catch you when you landed?
huh?
Where did the Germans catch you when you had safely landed from 30,000?
Oh, well, they were right there, because we hit the Brux works, and that was probably being one of the biggest of the refineries. It was the best fortified too.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, it was, as I say, we got plunked right after, just as we emptied our bombs on the target area. So they were right there, you know, when we parachuted. Everyone parachuted except our well, let's see, the turret man didn't make it. So, but did you see some of the shots there we had of some where his grave and everything out there, and in Czechoslovakia. They finally, after the war, they brought them home. But we had, in fact, I don't know, I had a whole pile of stuff. I don't know what happened to it. Parts of the plane and parts of this and whatnot. I think, did you go through a lot of that stuff there?
Yeah.
Did you see parts of the plane? You didn't?
I didn't see it. So, how were you treated as a prisoner of war?
Well,
You said not good, but, like, I mean...
no, it was lousy. Well, you had to be careful because you couldn't, what they had dogs, they had the police dogs. Right there at night, they'd let them loose. And your huts and barracks there, they were on, off the ground, you know, it was all, they were off the ground about, 3 feet off the ground. So there was no hiding, you know, under you know, their, whatever, the buildings. But, so actually what they had the towers there with the machine guns up there. And then in the compound there, they had a fence, they had 2 fences, the main fence there, and then they had a small fence, which was probably 20 feet or so, space between them. So actually you could walk along that small fence, but if you went over that way, they'd machine gun you. We've lost a few fellas there that tried to make a run at it, and so that wouldn't work out so well. But that was one of the things there that, no, I think the worst part of it was the Germans, they were overbombed, not overbombed, but so bombed, so by their facilities of making gas and, you know, the fuel, they just didn't have enough. What they did, they converted their mechanized things with well, actually, furnaces on a truck, and that would create enough gas to actually propel their equipment. So, actually, when they were herding us, we would pass them, and by the time they fueled up, we would pass them off. So it was a well. So was their food supply. I know ours was lousy. All we got was mostly potatoes. Can you imagine getting a pail of hot water for breakfast in the morning? Nothing else. I don't know what the purpose of that was, but never figured that out. But we didn't get the rations where you never got the regular rations. You got. I wish I had my memory, but anyway, we had a name for the bread. Was I don't think they even used a grain to make ersatz. It was the tricky name there. I don't know what they put for it, but on their bakeries and stuff like that, bakeries and bread, you know, it came along. But then actually, so they were pinched at the, now, let's see, I went down and was it, well, it was in 41. I wish I had my notes.
All right.
I don't even remember when I was shot back. Can you imagine that? It should have been one of those big star of the days, you know, the
Right.
highlight of, but being my makeup, I don't think anything ever bothered me, in a sense, which I always figured that it must have been an exceptionally either dumb or whatever it was. I didn't realize the spot I was in.
So, how long were you in captivity for? Do you remember?
Huh?
How long were you captive for?
Well, it was a couple of days short of a year, because, yeah, well, I had the dates, I don't know.
Right.
I wish,
Do you know who was it that saved you?
huh?
Do you know who it was that saved you? Like what army division or anything? It was
Saved
the,
me?
It was the British, right?
Oh, yeah, we were, actually it was, and I had the name of the artillery, and I think I mentioned that in the news. Liberated by the British. Are you looking at that article?
Yeah. I'm just,
Oh, I think you'll find it in there. That I wish my memory was. Well, it's been to my advantage not to have things really get under your skin and scare you. Because actually it was a lot of GIs, it was a breaking point for them, you know, with the stress and whatnot. But I always, even then, I figured the stress was something that was related to the strength of a piece of wood. And,
this is
it's got to be
the
in
British 3rd Royal Tank Regiment.
Right.
In April of '45.
Right, 45.
You were part of the Black Hunger March.
Oh, yes.
How much did you have to march?
Well, actually, we were marching 20 kilometers and whatnot, which a kilometer is a little over a mile.
Right.
So actually, that was without any, now all we had was little booties that time. And so we didn't have any place to go. So you marched from morning till evening from one barn to the next. And so you didn't get any, there was no feeding time or lunch time. It was a dragged out, and everybody would come down. I know I finally, when I finished up, I couldn't make it anymore. It was dysentery and well, actually, malnutrition and everything else. Yes, because, well, you remember that one book I had? I had a daily of the weather conditions and the marching time and stuff like that. I don't know what I did with all that, my diaries and stuff like that. I had them here somewhere. Did you see them at one time? No, nothing at all.
Maybe someone borrowed them or something?
I don't know how anybody could borrow them, but what did I do with them is a question. There isn't anything here, is there?
No, I will.
You went through that whole
Yeah.
file there? I had a whole stack of stuff here. Remember, to begin with, we had, and I can't imagine. put them? Well, I can't find anything anyway.
Right.
Gee, I had that, I don't know how many copies I had of my whole history of enlistment and the time spent at different levels, and all of a sudden, I'll let that memory just floated away or broke down. It was a breakdown in memory.
So, what did you do after you came back from the war?
Well, lucky enough, I met a minister that he took me under his care, under his wing anyway, and he made a Presbyterian out of me. And so actually, and being a Presbyterian, and then the ironworks down here, just forget what they called it. That was part of the head of that. The owners were the Presbyterian. The Jedrick family owned it. So I got a job in the shop there, in the machine shop, working on the lathe and stuff like that. So. Now let's see, I spent okay. From there on, I think I spent probably maybe 18 months or so down there at the shop and working in the shop. And I figured, well, I must have smartened up a little bit. And I says, well, I better get myself a civil service job. So I took the exam for the post office. And I got a job as a carrier. And that was, well, that was the best thing I ever did. Because that was a security blanket. I never realized that until after I retired from the post office. Actually, you had you were talking about security. You had all that. You had well, it was a safety valve. You had enough to get by, and enough. Well, actually, you had more than that. Well, of course, I come out pretty well shot up anyway, so I got discharged out of the Plattsburgh Hospital up here in New York. And so I got to get out on the disability, and that was another one of those things there that supplemented my, my post office job too. So it was an easy street from there on. My daughter went to, well, actually, the first thing I did, I bought these, this was a double lot to begin with.
You bought and built this house?
I bought, and we built the house, and well, before that, then my daughter went to school, and as I say, money was never a problem from there on. Can you imagine that?
Lucky.
I know it because actually now my daughter, I got her a little Volkswagen Bug. What did they call them? A Beetle? But I waited until she was in the third year up at Keuka because I wanted to spend a little bit more time with their books and their studies rather than, sporting around, holidaying and whatnot. So, but then again, okay, so we built, so then, and I told you, did I tell you about the luck there? My wife there, she was friendly with the McCard family. The McCard, he was a master builder. And we used to have coffee breaks in the evening, sit down and chat and whatnot. And all of a sudden, John he was John and I was John. And he said, John? I said, yes, John. He said, do you ever think of building a house? And I says, no. I says, not. I says, I probably thought about it, but I said, no, I didn't. It was way out of my reach, you know. I says, I'm not ready for it yet. But he says, well, he says, John, he says, do you have any money? Blunt as that. I says, yeah, I got some. How much? Well, I said, I don't have real money, but I've got the bonds, you know, the war bonds. How much? I says, oh, about $5,000 or so. He said, that's enough, we'll start building tomorrow. Can you imagine that? And you realize within a 5 years or so, the house was paid for and everything else. How else? You couldn't have that in the dream world. Everything just fell into place. I've never run into so much luck, and well, never will anyway. But I must have been gifted or something to fall under that kind of an umbrella, whatever it was. Anyway, so here we are, right here, the house built. What do you think of the house?
Fine.
It's nice.
Have you gone through it?
No, but
Take a walk.
all right. Well, I will.
You know?
Yeah,
Look
sure.
at it. All right.
Yeah. Open that bedroom door there on the left.
Pretty spacious.
What do you think?
I love it.
Isn't it?
It is. It's nice.
The
You got-
kids had a terrific time here. They chased each other around, run around in circles, and that's something that you couldn't find. You know, what a have a living room that's spacious and the window. It's well built. And that carpenter, as I say, he was a master carpenter, and the way he worked it. Before he'd come to work, he'd be down there at the Brux lumber yard there, and he'd pick out a whole supply, all day's work there, but every stick had to have the right color and straight as an arrow and whatnot, so. But he very fussy about building. So as you can see, and all he had was a skill saw. He didn't have all those, he had a lot of those old tools and stuff like that, but I mean, he was a master carpenter. And being almost part of the family, I got the benefit of all of his good skills and whatnot, so. But the house is well built, and now we moved in here in 45. No, 51. Because I was discharged in 45. So in 51, the house was all finished. Can you imagine that in that short time? You couldn't even do it today. But you couldn't, well, you couldn't get the lumber that was available at that time of the. Yeah. But
So-
anyway, I could never give, you know. A lot of my friends says, I'd say, well, it must have been lucky and stuff like that. No, it's just, actually, they remind me that actually that it was more of a heavenly gift that given, you know, rather than luck and stuff like that.
So, what do you think about the war now? Like, do you agree with war after being in it?
Well, they don't have the wars. Well, this war and the other war, they're all different. Now, it's, well, to me, I don't know, I can't understand it because actually you're not, when you have a war, you have two sides and whatnot. You see somebody and, you know, you're shooting at each other, killing somebody else, but you don't now. Actually, they get you, throw a bomb at you. Well, it all started in the Vietnam War with the China, was it Japanese or, yeah, it was Chinese. You didn't know who was a friend or foe. Mm-hmm. And they swarmed over on you, and so the last war was World War II. It was one that we won. Mm-hmm. We haven't won in a war since then. Actually, when you come down to it, but we had MacArthur, and we had, what was the other guy there with the two pistols there, gun hole there, what's his name? I can't think of the general.
Patton.
Patton. Yeah, Eisenhower and Patton. And look what they did to McDougal, I guess. MacArthur. Actually, they practically put him out in the, you know, because he wanted to fight a war, yeah. And he went against the grain and he got into trouble. And then you have in World War II, well, actually before we won that war, you had guys like McNamara that gave everything away, and I don't know. There was a no-win situation. It was all across the table, compromise this and compromise that and whatnot. So I don't know. So what we've got now, well, we're having a problem because look all well, the trouble they're having to really to fight a real war. Not so much because of the soldiers and whatnot. It's the political population there that's they'd rather that you quit rather than fight. So I don't know. I hate to get into making well, express my point of view on that stuff. Because I figure, well, let the generals and everybody else work it out. Because it's political. There's too much politics involved, and they'd rather talk than fight, so I better quit there.
That's all right. Do you have any questions?
No.
That's it?
That's it. Oh, if I dig up some of this stuff, we'll polish it off with some the details on.
All right.
I wish I don't know. I had a whole. Remember the first time then? Didn't I have a whole stack with diaries and?
No, the first time I came, you were looking for it too. You never found it.
Yeah, well, I'm always looking for something.